The truck's engine coughed in the frozen darkness. Below the tires, the lake cracked like distant gunfire. Inside the wooden cargo bed, children didn't cry anymore. They didn't have the strength. Ahead, barely visible through blowing snow, a single lantern marked the path across the ice. Behind them, a city was starving to death. Winter, 1941. Nazi Germany had surrounded Leningrad, a city of more than 3 million people. Adolf Hitler didn't want to capture it. He wanted it erased. Railways cut, warehouses bombed, every road blockaded. Food ran out within weeks. Horses disappeared first, then pets, then wallpaper paste, boiled for its glue. By December, workers received 250 grams of bread a day. Civilians received 125, one thin slice to survive a frozen day. Temperatures fell below -30 degrees Celsius. Electricity failed. Water pipes froze solid. Inside the city, people were dying in numbers almost impossible to comprehend. December 1941 became the deadliest month of the entire siege. More than 50,000 civilians lost in a single month, most to starvation, most to cold. The dead were stacked in the streets because the living no longer had the strength to bury them. But Leningrad had one narrow chance of survival: a frozen lake, Lake Ladoga. When winter sealed the lake with thick ice, Soviet commanders saw a desperate opportunity. If trucks could cross the frozen surface, they could bring food in and take civilians out. It sounded simple. It was suicide. The ice was unpredictable, too thin in places, cracked by artillery shock waves, broken by Luftwaffe bombing raids. German aircraft patrolled constantly, hunting for movement. Still, the order came: drive. The first convoy rolled out in November 1941. Drivers steered in total darkness. Headlights were banned. They followed pine branches stuck into the snow, marking a narrow, twisting path across 30 kilometers of open ice. Every driver knew the rule: if the ice cracks, don't stop. If you stop, the weight will sink you. So they drove faster. The trucks carried flour, grain, frozen meat. By January 1942, daily deliveries exceeded 2,000 tons. It wasn't abundance, but it was survival. On the return trip, they carried something even more fragile: children. Mothers wrapped them in blankets, some too late, some too weak to speak. Others stared silently, eyes too large for their thin faces. Over that winter, more than 360,000 civilians were evacuated across the ice. The road became known as the Road of Life, but death followed every kilometer. German bombers attacked almost daily. Explosions shattered the ice. Trucks plunged into black, freezing water. Drivers who survived had minutes before hypothermia took them. Some vehicles vanished without a sound, swallowed when the ice simply gave way. Still, the convoys kept moving. In January 1942, the cold became even more brutal. Ice thickened, so did the attacks. Artillery began targeting the lake itself. Shells tore open the frozen highway. At the operation's peak, over 300 trucks operated on the ice at the same time, each one a target. Then came the worst week. A Luftwaffe raid struck a convoy carrying food into Leningrad. Bombs blasted craters across the route. Trucks swerved, ice split. Vehicles toppled into freezing water, loaded with precious supplies. Drivers behind them faced a choice: turn back or drive around the wreckage over ice that might not hold. They drove on. One survivor later said, "We were more afraid of stopping than dying, because if the road stopped, the city would die." Engineers rushed onto the lake under fire. They filled bomb craters with logs and packed snow. Route markers were moved constantly. Anti-aircraft guns were dragged onto the ice itself. The road never closed, not for a single day that winter. Between the winter of 1941 and the spring thaw, the Road of Life delivered over 200,000 tons of supplies into Leningrad. It evacuated hundreds of thousands of civilians, many of them children. Food rations remained tiny. People still starved. More than 1 million civilians would die during the siege, but without the frozen road, almost no one would have survived. The city held on. Factories kept producing weapons. Soldiers defended the front lines. Life, in its weakest form, refused to disappear. When the ice melted, boats took over. When winter returned, the trucks came back. The road operated in different forms for nearly 2 years until the siege was finally broken. The Siege of Leningrad became one of the longest and deadliest sieges in human history. Hitler's plan had been simple: starve the city into submission. The Road of Life broke that plan. It proved something history often forgets. Wars are not decided by battles alone. They are decided by logistics. A strip of frozen water became more powerful than tanks. Today, the bottom of Lake Ladoga still holds the rusting skeletons of trucks that never made it across. Drivers who knew the ice might crack beneath them drove anyway. Not for medals, not for glory, but for strangers they would never meet, children in the back of a truck, too weak to cry, carried across a frozen lake towards life. In a war defined by destruction, the Road of Life was something different. It was humanity driving straight into death so others could live.